3, 2, 1. Welcome everybody to SQW, the Naitch edition. I've really got to warm up my pipes every time I do this. I'm eventually going to lose my voice. I am Dolly Domovsky, one of the triple threat tag team of SQW, the podcast.
The king of trios.
The king of trios. I am Dolly Raspy Voice Domovsky. Joining me, am I still the champion, by the way?
You are.
Yes.
In a weird way, I'm still the champ.
Yeah,
By not participating, I'm still the champ.
the Brock Lesnar champion.
Yeah, joining me is John.
Former champ?
Former champ, 4K.
4K champ. 4K.
Let's bring up the ESPN Ric Flair wrestling nickname generator.
Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, let's do that. That's good. That's good.
Dolly,
that is also JJ's voice that you're hearing, but we're gonna do our thing right now.
Yeah. Well, Dolly, you're Rocky Monster.
Yes, Dolly Rocky Monster Domovsky.
John, you would be the
magnificent Kong.
The magnificent Kong.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I am the magnificent Hurricane. So
okay.
JJ, the magnificent Hurricane holder. Here we go.
That's cool.
I think
like
John
this.
wins. I think John wins with
Magnificent
Kong.
Magnificent Kong. Yeah.
And we will get into more of the Nature Boy stuff later on, but that was certainly a super interesting 30 for 30. But there's a lot to cover this week. Oh boy, is there a lot to cover. We haven't recorded in a couple weeks here, but we are back. Be glad. Be ready. Be warned. I'm gonna throw the. I think the link went live, or it's about to on SQW. If not, I'm gonna post the link and let people know. Feel free to watch us. In the meantime, I'm gonna go through a little bit of an agenda here. We've got a lot of WWE stuff to cover, a lot leading up to Survivor Series. We've got some TNA, some major TNA, crazy TNA stuff to go through, and we even have some New Japan stuff to chat about, which could be really freaking awesome. Then we're gonna get into the Nature Boy, and we'll try to knock this bad boy out as with an elbow off the top rope as fast as we can. Let's start with the WWE Survivor Series lead up. There has been so much stuff that has been happening.
Yeah, boy, howdy, has there been? I guess the biggest out of all of it will be the title picture, right? Like you had. It was Jinder Mahal versus Brock Lesnar. And just within the last week, they decided Jinder Mahal or Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles was the way to go. So AJ Styles beat Jinder Mahal for the championship in on their European tour on SmackDown.
Yeah, I feel like rather where the last pay-per-view was changed by a case of meningitis. I think this I think this time they're suffering from a case of cold feet with Jinder.
With Jinder, yeah. Except Jinder, like, he's wrestling Hunter, in the last leg of this tour, which is weird and interesting.
Is he really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. I just saw a news story pop up where he's wrestling Hunter, which is interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah, Hunter's been doing a couple of he was part of the Shield on this tour.
Yeah, the Shield.
Yeah,
lots of H's in there. 3
H's in that particular one. Yeah, it's because Roman still isn't back yet, but he's back. He's pretty much back this week. It's pretty much a given there.
Yeah.
Which will segue us into the next topic. We do have new Raw Tag Team Champions because an invading New Day came in on Monday Night Raw and ended up costing Shield 2.0 the titles against the Bar, as they're known now.
The Bar.
But so I didn't really expect the New Day versus the Shield to be where they were going until that happened, and you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Well,
three-man team versus a three-man team. If only something like War Games existed in the WWE in some shape or form.
Yeah, that's
I mean, the name is back, but who knows what they're gonna do with it?
Yeah.
Have you seen what they're doing with it with that War Games? That is a weird, because it's like 3 teams, which are 4. Was it 3 teams?
Three
Or 4?
teams.
3 teams. That
Teams
makes
of
no
3.
sense. Yeah, that makes no sense. But whatever.
Yeah. The New Day and the Shield. I had this sneaking suspicion that I mean, and I've heard other people say it too, that I think the initial idea was Shield versus New Day, and then it got kind of sidetracked because of the Roman being out,
Yeah.
and they were kind of figuring out what else to do with them. But now that, again, like you said, Roman's back as of I think Monday. I think they're back on course.
Yeah, I was sitting in a Buffalo Wild Wings yesterday, and their ad played for Survivor Series, and it had the Shield versus the New Day, and it had Roman Reigns in that. I mean, that match isn't signed yet, but that match is clearly 110% happening. So Roman Reigns will be back this week. If it's not Monday, it'll be Tuesday, because it sounds like the Shield is going to be on SmackDown this week. So.
That's been one of the I muted. Okay, I didn't know if I was still muted. The Roman Reigns stuff has been kind of interesting, just to follow the roller coaster of what WWE keeps trying to do. We talked about it at the last few shows where they decided, you know what, let's just throw him back into the Shield, and people seem to enjoy that, and they're ready for him to kind of go back to being a part of that team as opposed to being a singles wrestler.
Yeah.
It's when he was working well.
That's when he was the most over, was when he was in the Shield. So try to recapture that while you can, I guess.
But they've done little things where the Shield sort of got together, or they fought each other again.
It's not like they haven't been apart from one another,
pretty
much at all. Whether it be as feuding or tagging or weird, like, you're gonna have to team with Seth Rollins tonight, like it or not, or whatever. There hasn't been enough time apart from the Shield to really make it mean anything other than it's just a neat little excursion while they try to get Roman Reigns back into the main event picture. But whatever. I like the idea of the Shield versus New Day. That's a fun match idea.
Oh, it'll be a real fun match. Will it be elimination or the single pin?
I bet it'll be elimination. It seems like that would be
why not, right? Why not?
You're at Survivor Series that way. Might as well.
Now, before we move on, I would like to ask the collective here: how do we feel about that main event title change and title match switch up? Like we mentioned it just now, but how do we feel about that? Like, are we happier, or are we kind of like, what are they doing? Like, what was wrong? If I may, like, I think Brock AJ is definitely the better match, but I'm not sure if it's the thrown together match that I wanted.
It's not a match that you put together 2 weeks in advance kind of match. Like, do want. I mean, because you have plenty of good back. 2 former IWGP champions going head to head in the WWE ring, and like, there's a lot of build for something like that. It's not a particular, like, in terms of sort of man versus man, it's probably it doesn't look good because AJ's so much smaller than Brock. Like,
yes,
but
visually it'll be a very uphill battle. But I mean, just going back to the gender thing, like, what did they have it booked, in advance, and then they realize, oh, this is not going to look good either,
is it like the India tour is done and you haven't sold any T-shirts, so we need you out of here as fast as possible, or?
But it's not done. The promotional tour, the promotional tour is done, and the actual tour is coming up. So
right.
So are we getting a better looking Survivor Series main event, and then Jinder gets it back real quick?
Yeah, short-sighted main event.
I'm kind of wondering if that's what's going to happen, because that tour is December 8th and 9th.
Because
I don't know.
Because from what I understand, I don't think the Jinder visit and all the focus on India has increased subscriptions to the network or these kinds of things. I don't know if it's really moved the needle very much. So I don't know if they're just going.
I don't even know what I honestly, outside of the U.S. and Canada, I have no idea what the subscription deal is with the WWE network outside of North America. Like, so
I say that because that's what I heard. I don't have a sheet of paper to back up my claim.
WWE network does exist in India. It's been there for a couple of years now, so I'm just looking at it right now.
I have no idea. I know
Because
Canada has an option to be an actual physical channel on the dial too, which is interesting. Like,
yeah, it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
So just before we get too far, WWE Live in India takes place this Friday, December 8th, and there are some kind of interesting matches going on. There's like a cosplay match. Apparently, if this is correct of what I'm reading, it says, let's see, Alexa Bliss and Nia Jax take Maurice. No, never mind. I'm sorry. I was reading something. I said cosplay match. Okay. No, it was completely different. Sorry about that. This is what happens when you only read the summary in a Google search as opposed to clicking on the actual link.
There is a
Roman Reigns and AJ Styles are going to be in a cosplay match. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. There is an interesting change coming up because I have a buddy who got tickets to go see Starrcade. He's going to that Starrcade show.
Okay.
And that main event was Jinder Mahal versus Shinsuke Nakamura for the title. If that's changed, if like Jinder Mahal is not the champion anymore, if it's still a title match, that is AJ Styles,
versus Nakamura.
Shinsuke Nakamura.
Oh my god!
On an untelevised title match in the WWE. But I don't know if they'll change it to that. That seems too crazy. That seems like, but who knows? It's Starrcade,
right?
So,
boy, oh boy.
Yeah, imagine that would be what WWE would do, though, right? Like it would be like for the first time ever in WWE, these two are going to wrestle against one another for a championship, and it's not going to be on TV.
Not totally.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. So just to recap, I'm feeling better about the match as on paper.
Yeah.
I hope it doesn't mean that AJ is going to get any kind of a shaft here long term.
I don't want this to mean he's just listen, you're just a placeholder until we go back to our normal plans.
Yeah.
the John Cena Jinder Mahal title match that we really wanted to have.
Yeah.
Because remember, that was back when it was Jinder Mahal. The rumor was, and there was a poster that came out, it was going to be Brock Lesnar versus Jinder Mahal with John Cena as the special guest referee.
Yep.
That's clearly changed. John Cena is on the card. He's on Team SmackDown now.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that we can transition to that match as well now. Yeah. But yeah, it's an interesting shuffling of the cards.
Yeah. There was a rumor because it was so abrupt that Jinder Mahal might have got busted for something. There might have been a wellness policy violation, or there could have been just a straight up injury. But he denies it. They deny it. He hasn't been suspended yet, so obviously that was just speculation.
He's still working. Yeah, he's still working house shows.
Yeah, so we'll see. The future WWE doesn't really work in any sort of consistency, so it could just be like we're going to finish up what we're doing with him right now overseas and then give him the boot. But
there's been no consistency the last 2 months, man. It's wild, actually. But anyway, I'll meet up.
Like, I don't know about the main event. Like, that's an interesting group of people that they've got going on with that. Their traditional Raw versus SmackDown match is like, it's a ragtag group on both sides. Like the people you would want on your Team Raw side, like aren't on your, like, you would think you would want any of the Shield members would be on your main Raw team, but no, they're doing their own thing and they're in there. So what Team Raw is? Kurt.
Yeah, it's Kurt and Braun.
Jason Jordan,
Finn Balor, and Samoa Joe.
Yeah.
Which on paper is you got Finn and Samoa, and even Jason Jordan. I think that's a pretty good grouping right
Father
there.
And son.
Father and son.
Joining. Braun Strowman, like you would think that anyone with Braun Strowman on their team would be an automatic sort of like, he tipped over an ambulance with his bare hands. There's no way anyone should be able to.
Yeah, he survived the garbage truck,
Yeah. If the Miz literally tried to murder him, and he came right back. So
yeah, it's an interesting team. Finn Balor and Joe had the little scuffle on Raw, which was unresolved. But Finn and Braun have both taken heat from Kane without any comeuppance.
Yeah.
So like,
I wouldn't be surprised to see Kane get involved in that match in some way, shape,
no,
or
of course
form.
not.
So that's he'll take Braun out of the equation in that match or something. Like you'll have that kind of nonsense playing out that way if he gets involved. Who's on SmackDown? It's Shane, Cena.
Randy, Bobby Roode, Shinsuke, and Cena. So I look at this and I think, wow, SmackDown is sort of the early to mid 2000s group with Randy Orton and John Cena and Shane McMahon, and then you have like kind of the more modern generation with Finn and Samoa and Braun on the other side.
Yeah. That's it. SmackDown's team is weird. Like it kind of really shows you just kind of like SmackDown really is like the B show to WWE because they don't have like what WWE would deem as a massive superstar outside of Cena and Orton. Like those are those are the people that they seem to want to rest everything on. So
I mean, Cena wouldn't even have been there had they not yanked him from whatever TV show or movie he's doing. You know,
poor Cena. He just can't get 2 weeks away. He can't string together a month or two until the WWE's like, hey, listen, we need you.
Oh God, we need you. Yeah. Dally, did you see any of Rusev's commentary on the Cena selection?
No, I missed it.
So Rusev lost Rusev had to go through qualifying matches or match to try to get on the team, which he lost, and then all the other members went through qualifying matches, but Cena gets you're in, right? And what was his tweet that he put out there, JJ?
Oh, what was it? Now you're gonna have to look it up because it was hilarious, and I want to know I want to know just the right wording.
Yeah, good job on your qualifying match there, or something like that. He said, and
it
was pretty good stuff.
Yeah, he is really, really good at Twitter completely. Like Rusev is, who's congrats to my friend John Cena who qualified for the Survivor Series fair and square. Go get him, Tiger.
And Rusev's also starting to really rule it on the promos. Like a couple of weeks ago, Renee Young said to him that he looked elated after his victory, and he said, "What did that mean?" That means really excited and happy. So he's been using the word elated in every promo he's done since then, making sure to use it. I'll be elated to be on your team. This is the weirdest way.
Yeah, he's just so good. He's like he went from being just sort of middling to just like really figuring out who Rusev is.
Well, so there are only 7 announced matches. And last year there was 8 or 9 last year, 8. And they had they had 2 5-on-5 matches, but then they also had a 10-on-10, the tag team one.
These are always so bad.
They're so bad. I wouldn't mind seeing one more 5-on-5 match of, you got to get Rusev in there somewhere. You have to get him in there.
You're getting the women's match.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, which is where they're apparently Paige is going to get worked into.
Okay.
But just like the rest of the card, it's an easy pay-per-view scenario to get the rest of the card a paycheck.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can have a pretty short, snappy Survivor Series match without being overbooked. I mean, there's a number of guys on the SmackDown side who are not involved in this card.
Yeah. What is it? We've got Miz and Corbin. So Corbin's got his spot there.
Yeah.
There's
Enzo and Kalisto.
Enzo and Kalisto.
Yeah.
God help us.
There's Cesaro and Sheamus against the Usos.
Yeah, that's
the other one. So it's champions versus champions all the way down.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Yeah. Other than the main event, it's all champion versus champion. Which all right. This is finally the time to do it. Like you finally have your very definitive lines in the roster and stuff. So it's like when they tried to do all this stuff like out the gate for Survivor Series when they first brought on the roster split and everything, and it just doesn't work out. But now that there's definitive lines, there's like, okay, this is Raw, this is SmackDown. Yeah, it's now very clear who's where.
And last year they did have just a couple. They had a couple, non-champion versus champion matches, or a few. Yeah. So this year they're definitely trying to show that a little bit more. I will say one thing. So last year Kane was in the Survivor Series. This year he's not, and he did run for He did run for let's see, a mayoral seat.
That election hasn't happened yet, so
it hasn't happened yet. But I think it's phenomenal that he's still wrestling, and yet he's running for mayor at the same time. So he goes from like suit and tie one day to fake long hair the next day.
Yeah, I have no idea how his campaign is going. I just want it to be a surprise.
Yes.
I just want the news. I want there to be a WWE alert that says Kane elected mayor of Knoxville.
Kane elected mayor. You know what's hilarious is that would have been some type of strange like kayfabe back in like the late 90s, you know. Kane elected mayor, and now holy shit, it's actually happening.
Well, the headline will be "Good God Almighty, Kane has won the election."
Yeah, Kane has
exactly.
He's won the electoral title.
Through hellfire and brimstone, Kane has won the election. Did you see that they announced Lucha Underground season 4?
Yes,
it's finally happening.
I'm so relieved.
There was a lot of like, I have no idea because like AAA and stuff, just there's been a lot of stuff going on over in that area. Nobody really knew for certain if there was going to be a season 4, and here we are, officially announced. We're getting.
It's good. I've been watching here and there season 3. I actually am not caught up, so nobody spoil it. But I since you guys got me started on it a year or so ago, I've been enjoying it. So
it'll be interesting how that season looks. I mean, budget aside, I mean, in terms of the roster, because there's a lot of guys in the last year who, despite the show, season 3 having been pre-taped for so long, are apparently gone. So I won't say who, because that'll spoil some things for you, Dally, probably. But there's a few guys that won't be returning. I don't think.
I could see, you know, what's really interesting is I could see Netflix. Netflix obviously had Glow, and Glow has been confirmed for season 2. But they're missing this kind of show could actually run fairly well on like an actual Netflix produced, you know, a wrestling show, as opposed to them just taking.
And I would love a Netflix style wrestling show like Lucha Underground, which just it goes a little too deep into kayfabe, like you know, just steal the idea of Southpaw regional wrestling and make your own wrestling.
Totally.
There are so many independent guys that would just be all over doing a show on Netflix. That was that was like super 80s style, like you know, big storylines kind of stuff. So that'd be fun.
Well, and speaking of independent wrestlers, here's a good segue. There are a few more because of the issues that have been happening over at TNA or GFW or whatever we want to call it. There's a lot of independent people looking for work now.
There's a lot going on with that company all around, whether it be
guys want to
old hires.
Yeah, go ahead, jump in on this.
So first of all, that company is now a Canadian company. They've been having a lot of financial issues since the whole like GFW, like the Fight Network and all that stuff taking over, and Anthem and stuff. So from what Jeff Jarrett's out. Jeff Jarrett's been out of that company. He's in, and apparently, that happened without them ever actually finalizing the GFW contracts. So all of this work that they're doing, they've started using the titles and the naming and everything, and they never owned it. It was never like folded into the company altogether. So they filmed all of this TV, and they can do, after it's all aired, there's nothing they can do. They can't go with GFW anymore because that deal can't go through at this point.
Yeah, it's Jeff's.
Yeah, it's Jeff's. So that deal's done. There's no longer GFW. There is because Alberto Del Rio's back now. That was another. I saw a picture of the championship, right? They have right now, and it is the GFW championship, but they just put like a metal emblem over the GFW logo, and the side plates still have the GFW logo on it.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my god. Boy.
There's a bad transition, and so they were doing their big show in Ottawa. There is a lot that happened with just this one show alone, because Bound for Glory was in Canada, and they were doing this big show in Ottawa, and like they lost the referees, like all of
Mhm.
them, because Earl Hebner left because they told the referees that they're going to be using local talent while they're in Canada for the referees, and they just all left.
Wow.
So there was that. They sent out there was a casting call sent out. So for $50 a day, you'll get a 4-hour taping of TNA, and you just have to play the role of TNA fan. They encourage you. They encourage you to wear shirt and jeans, bring a sign, kind of and this is like an actual casting call. Like for
Wow.
$50, you can be in the audience and watch TNA and be a TNA cast as a TNA cast member, basically. On top of that, there was also another like quote unquote casting call they were looking for fans to be able to experience what it's like to put together a ring. so
This is great. It's instead of hiring anybody.
They were outsourcing the ring crew for this show. So
Crazy.
the money issue is not good in GFW, in Impact, Anthem, GFW,
Whatever it's called.
Whatever wrestling it is that's going to be this week, this month, whatever. Things aren't looking good there. They've moved all their operations to Canada now, which I don't know what they gain from that. I don't know what kind of cuts are they getting? Tax breaks are they getting by?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, they might be able to get some tax breaks by filming in Canada. I hadn't thought about that angle. Well, yeah, paying people $50 Canadian to come to their shows. I don't know.
No, it's going to be American dollars. That's how you get butts and seats.
No, that's a good question. I mean, I don't know if that means that they plan to tour in Canada at all.
Because
maybe not.
Because like you would assume that they would have a long-term contract in Florida for their Impact tapings that they do, because the Impact Zone stuff and things like. Again, they don't. Nobody pays to go see that stuff unless it's a pay-per-view, because when they're going to Impact tapings, it is basically a theme park attraction. Unless you have a season pass to Universal Studios,
Well, I mean, I think the cost to Anthem. I mean, Anthem is Canadian, right? I mean, the Fight Network, all that's based in Canada.
The Fight Network is Canada.
So for them to produce and film in the U.S. is probably 20-30% more expensive than it would be to film and produce locally. So
that's why movies go to Vancouver all the time. And
exactly. The opposite happens to reduce costs, and so they're probably looking at a 20% budget cut just by virtue of filming it all in Canada. Now, maybe they think that they're not going to get the fan base, so that's why they're paying the $50 a head for a couple hundred folks to sit in their seats and and cheer and boo or not. But it's all dollars and cents.
Yeah. Who else did they do? They lost a couple other guys too. They lost Rockstar Spud's gone now.
Yeah.
James Storm is gone.
Yeah. Is Storm showing up in NXT again? I don't know.
I don't think so. Wasn't the place for him in the first place, and it's not the place for him now. Rockstar Spud will.
Yeah.
That's pretty much. It sounds like.
I think he's 205.
He would have to be. He's a tiny dude.
Yeah.
And he's basically British Enzo for the most part.
British Enzo.
Yeah. But I think he could show up and be ready to go. I don't even know if he would need the NXT rub or. Maybe a bit of time in the training center, but not the.
But I think he's ready to go in terms of competing, but I don't know if he's ready to go in terms of WWE ready to go. He might need that extra layer of screen presence training that you get in NXT. That's mostly what it's used for those guys most of the time. Because, NXT, like, he's an unknown. Like, if you said Rockstar Spud, somebody would think that's some sort of like video game character or something. Like, it doesn't sound like
a favorite drink.
Like,
it's the potato-based energy drink.
New flavor of Lay's,
No, Rockstar Spud would be like vodka mixed with Red Bull or something. Like
vodka. Rockstar.
But so things are just going to get worse before they get better if they ever get better. At this point, with everything that's gone on with just this past 2 weeks, you're like, I think this is kind of it. It's bankrupted, and like the Fight Network is just on. in dire straits. They had to lay off a bunch of staff because of lost
That's
money,
nuts.
and I don't know. I don't know, like, what are you holding out for? What are you trying to figure out? What are you trying to figure out as a company? Because you haven't figured it out yet, and you don't seem to be making any movements to
The
figure it
only
out.
thing that I think is worth any value are those tapes. Really, it's that.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
and the WWE, it's like the WWE is just waiting for them to
yeah,
completely fall apart before they
what
swoop
did
in
they?
and buy up
Because like
the
what they only spent, like they spent less than 2 million on WCW, didn't they?
something
Wasn't it
like that.
like
Yeah.
wasn't it
Something
like one
crazy.
point? Yeah, it was like 1.5 million or something. Like
Mhm.
you, like there's no way you're worth that much right now, Impact.
Yeah.
So like, and it's only going to get worse and worse as you go
I
on.
think the
So
three of us could pool together our incomes and probably buy what's left of TNA Impact. Oh
so
man,
yeah.
what's a so that's a bad import into Canada, but a good export out of Canada.
Hey, I love that. That's the best
Chris
segue you've ever.
Jericho. I'm really good at seg.
And Kenny
And
Omega
go ahead, tell and Kenny Omega. Yeah.
and and
So
Kenny
this
Omega. So
when
yeah,
this news dropped, I was pretty floored. Did you,
Mhm.
John? Do
we
you
all
want to
were.
explain? Yeah, I think we all were. John, you want to talk about this?
Yeah, so Jericho and Kenny Omega, both from Winnipeg, here in Canada,
Both
and
Jets fans.
yeah, that's right. And so they've been having a little bit of a Twitter tussle the last couple of weeks or so, maybe a month or so, and so you know the speculation was that it was leading to some kind of an angle or a match, and in particular, maybe on Jericho's cruise. He's got
Yeah,
a rock and wrestling kind of cruise going on in
yeah, because
2018,
yeah, and
and
it has a Ring of Honor sponsored wrestling
yeah,
show on there. So yeah, why not? Bullet
yeah.
Club wrestles in Ring of Honor, of course. That makes
Exactly
sense.
right. So like the Bucks are going to be there and a bunch of other Ring of Honor people,
Yeah,
and so people thought that maybe this would be like the main event of that cruise ship, um, a wrestling event that he's going to have on there. But as it turns out, they at the last big New Japan event, I can't remember the name of JJ.
I wasn't prepared. Now I had to forget.
Okay, never mind. I thought maybe you watched it. Okay, no, the last big New Japan pay per view, Omega got challenged by Chris Jericho
Yeah.
to have a match at Wrestle Kingdom, the next one,
The big,
14,
yeah,
13.
yep. Big January 4th wrestling show.
Yeah, their WrestleMania, the
Their
biggest show of the
WrestleMania,
year,
100%.
which
Yep.
is amazing on a number of levels because I mean, one being Chris Jericho has publicly sworn up and down he would never wrestle for anybody other than Vince McMahon,
Yeah.
and here he is wrestling for somebody else,
Yeah.
and glad to do so. And the reasons for that have been speculated that it may be a response to him requesting the NXT talent compete on his cruise and was denied that request.
Yeah.
And this might be a bit of that, or Jericho just being a smart dude and getting his piece of the hottest wrestling act going on
Yeah. I mean, you can't blame. Like, apparently Jericho's been working. Was like for the last 6 months he hasn't been under contract with WWE.
Yeah.
Like, so he's even had appearances in WWE that weren't under contract. They were just him
one-offs
being there. Yeah. So.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, so now we're gonna have this big match, and
Hell yeah,
there's a lot of
Wrestle Kingdom's shaping up real nice. Like,
yeah, I mean
Cody Rhodes will be defending the Ring of Honor championship there. Like,
mm-hmm. like we've been on this show, we've been talking about how New Japan would be able to sort of penetrate the American market, and this is a big move. This is a big stride in that direction. I mean, I'm telling you,
get eyes, like American eyes, more so, more casual American eyes,
exactly. And I mean, based on what's going on with Daniel Bryan, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't wrestle for Vince again. He'll be next year, the year after Wrestle Kingdom, wrestling. I don't know, Ibushi or somebody. Who knows?
I would have loved, I'm sure Vince's only question after he found out that Chris Jericho's wrestling in New Japan is like, well, he's going to be at the Rumble though, right? Like, he's still good.
We're still going to get him, right?
Yeah, he's still with us, right? Yeah. So it's I mean, it's a that's a big time signing, a big time deal, and
still rocking the scarf too. Like he hasn't changed that part of his look either, even for Japanese wrestling.
well, yeah, that's right. And he has his own name. I mean, his entrance theme will be a Fozzy song, I assume. Like he has this whole. And, I mean, he plays shows in Japan. Like I mean, he had between that and the podcast, his podcast network is really big, so he can promote that match on every podcast he produces and hit all the hardcore guys and the casual people. It's
it's
even has a TV show here in Canada. To be honest, the second season coming out. I Am Jericho or Chris Jericho as an actor, something like that, is on the CBC.
He's got another show coming out here where he's like searching for lost historical treasure, like on the Travel Channel.
So I mean.
A multimedia powerhouse right now.
Yeah, so. I mean, and he's quietly snuck into that into that position, unbeknownst to maybe I don't know, maybe the Vince himself, I guess.
Yeah,
and that. So it's quite the coup.
Yeah, I am amazed by all of it.
I will watch it. That's for sure.
Totally.
Absolutely.
And this is something I will be. Yeah, I'm going to be circling that date for sure. Speaking of Chris Jericho's, it's the Rockin' Wrestling Rager at Sea, and it takes place from October 27th through the 31st. And he's actually got a pretty good lineup. I did a search. It's ChrisJerichoCruise.com. He's got the Ring of Honor, the Sea of Honor tournament, special guests including Foley, DDP, Mysterio, Raven.
I don't know.
And he's even got, he's got good music. He's got good comedians out there that are showing up. So it looks like a decent time.
I just don't know if I would want to spend that much time on a boat with people that are huge fans of Fozzy.
Yeah, right.
That just seems like a bad time.
I'm not sure if Fozzy's the real draw here.
Right, yeah.
But still, like it's interesting who they've got. Yeah.
It's if it didn't fall during my daughter's birthday, and that is her birthday weekend, and it's also Halloween, it may be something I could consider, especially as the weather gets a little colder here in my home area of Michigan. So, yeah.
Right now, if anyone's wondering what the pricing is for 2 guests in the cheapest room, it's $775 per person.
No. You're mistaken. It's $775 per person plus $225 per person for taxes and fees. The cheapest for 2 guests is $1,000.
I didn't. Okay, I scrolled past that little per person taxes and fees part.
It's a cruise. Okay. They can add up whatever they need to.
Exactly. You can take just for letting people know, you can get a 7-day cruise for like a $450 US. All fees basically included. So this is you're paying to be around these people.
Do those cruises have Jim Brewer? No.
Yeah. No, I don't know if you'd want to have Jim Brewer on any cruise, man.
Goat Boy himself.
Goat Boy himself.
Goat Boy. Oh God.
Moving on. I think I don't know if there's anything else. I was looking at my list. We mentioned Paige being potentially coming back.
Mm-hmm. We didn't mention that there's not much to talk about since there's not much story, but they sent Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn home during the European tour, because for going into business for themselves, apparently. So apparently going into business for themselves was after the Kofi Kingston Sami Zayn match on SmackDown. There was a fight. Kevin Owens came into the ring, started throwing fists, and they were both out of the ring by the time the rest of the New Day got into the ring. And it sounds like what was supposed to happen was Kevin Owens and them were supposed to still be in the ring and be fed to the New Day.
Okay.
And they decided against that. They decided to run away and not have that play out, which makes much more sense from a wrestling standpoint, especially with shaky. Sami Zayn hasn't really had much heel work, so making him a cowardly heel makes a lot more sense than just getting beaten up.
Yeah,
he just got beaten up. Now he's going to get beaten up again.
The way Lance Storm described it, I think, was that they were supposed to do the bit where the heels are on the outside and then they jump in to attack, to try to attack, and then they get fended off. Like they take some smacks and they jump back out
Yeah.
and they try a couple times. They just didn't do it at all. They just left.
Yeah, so that
Hmm.
pissed off everyone, and they got the go ahead from Vince to just send them home. So
Wow.
it's unknown if they're actually in the doghouse. I feel like if anyone's going to suffer from that, it would be Sami Zayn before it was Kevin Owens.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how Triple H took the heat when when they after the curtain call. Somebody
Yeah.
has to get in trouble, and it's not going to be the one that actually has the ability to draw.
Mhm.
So
But those guys are the two particular SmackDown absentees that I was referring to.
yeah,
You know, from the
yeah,
team,
they
from
are.
the
Yeah, they
card
are
in
not
general.
on. They've been building up a storyline, and they are not playing with it at all for
Hmm.
for the major pay-per-view of the year. So
Yeah, it could be that they switch gears because of the Shield. Because presumably the
yeah,
Shield and New Day are having that
New Day.
match.
Yeah.
Well, but I
So
mean, that would give them the boot. But like whatever they're building up with their conflicts with Shane is
yeah,
back burnered,
yeah,
and
Oh yeah.
you
yeah.
know
So
it's
we'll
weird.
see.
Yep.
Survivor Series just sort of exists in its own bubble, and then the storylines are going to snap back into place
Hmm.
afterwards.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I guess that's one of the things that makes Survivor Series and even like the Royal Rumble event kind of fun is that they are their sort of their own thing,
yeah,
and you can go in there and not knowing any storylines, anything going on, just that it's kind of this. It is sort of a classic '80s style wrestling. Um,
yeah,
it's more of the more about the show than it is the lead up to it. So.
yeah.
Okay. Well, speaking of let's move on to this last part. There's no lead up for this last part.
Yep.
Wanted to talk a little bit about the Nature Boy 30 for 30 that
Finally,
happened. Yeah, finally. I think we've been hearing about
6 years in
it
the
for
making. I
6 years
Yeah.
think
in the well, if you watched it, it was probably like 36 years in the making. But yeah, the, ESPN had the 30 for 30, the much anticipated 30 for 30 Nature Boy,
yeah,
Naitch. Did you get a chance to watch this, John? I know you were having
I
some.
did. Yep, I did
Oh,
get
you
to
ended
see
up
it.
watching. Okay, cool, because it hadn't aired around the world yet, and out of the U.S. when we on that date. But I've watched it
yeah.
1.5 times. I'm halfway through a second viewing.
Yeah,
I actually really enjoyed it.
it
Yeah,
aired in
it's
Canada
really
on
good.
Friday.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool. Cool.
It's
So initial
it
thoughts.
didn't. Like it was very well done. Like
Yeah.
just like it covered exactly Ric Flair's career how it should have been covered.
Mm-hmm.
Like not a whole lot of there's not a whole lot of like groundbreaking information.
Right.
Like it's just nice to see them sort of like keep the patina on, kind of like
Mm-hmm.
there's been a couple of WWE produced documentaries that were all very good and showed the gray of his life, but not to the extent that this one did, where
Mhm.
WWE's hand is a little more out of it than
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to sort of see it be a little more dirty, like a little more
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
character for some, like to have
Man,
it not be
yeah.
the Undertaker, but have it be this is Mark Calloway talking about Ric Flair,
Mm-hmm.
not the Undertaker talking about Ric Flair. So
yeah,
that's I always love seeing that stuff, especially when it's weird seeing the Undertaker talk like as a normal dude
Yeah.
with just like
yeah.
a
With
slight
the
Southern
gravel.
drawl and like
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
it's seeing a lot of those cameos pop up was kind of interesting because
like
obviously they had folks from
yeah
kind of Ric Flair's
yeah it's like, oh,
years
they're the
past, but yeah.
they somehow found Baby Doll. Look at
Yeah, they
that.
found
Mhm.
Baby Doll. They found a few.
Yeah.
There were a few. Triple H, obviously, he
Yeah,
is for everything that dude has done. He's a smart dude. I mean, he's firmly vested, obviously, in that family, in the in the money there, and he takes ownership to big levels. And so when he kind of presented his couple portions of talking about Flair during kind of I think it was the right around the time his son had passed away and
yeah.
his life was just
Yeah.
spiraling out of control.
That was hard to watch when it
Yeah.
got to
Oh
that
man.
point of
Yeah.
that paper. Like it's visible, like even like just in the documentary, Ric Flair
Mhm.
starting to when that scene where they have him take off his makeup and show like
Yes. Yeah.
his skin just being how bad it is. Like, oh god.
Mhm.
But
Yeah. He is.
yeah,
He lived he was. I mean, Ric Flair wasn't just a made up character. That was him, and that's what I think maybe is so impressive about why he's one of the top few great wrestlers of all time. Is that that was him. I mean, he to the Gators, to his lines, the way he presented himself, the lifestyle, and he purposely. I think he and the Four Horsemen would purposefully like take limousines and jets. They would spend exorbitant amounts of money. They didn't have to, but they did it anyways to keep that lifestyle and keep that. That was them. That was their identity. Their image.
They did. Yeah, it meant everything to keep that heat. Even if there was the potential of having a fan see you driving around town in like a
Pinto,
Buick. A Pinto, or that's like something with the door panel coming off a little bit, or a rental car, like that destroys everything for driving. Yeah, so it was very important, particularly to Ric Flair. Like, he loves the business a lot and will do anything for it. And which just further, like, his last years in WCW just sort of proves that, because they treated him like garbage. The second Hulk Hogan came into that company, they treated him like garbage, but he stayed there even after they fired him because he wanted to go to his son's wrestling match. He still came back and was still on TV all the time. And like, wrestling means a lot to him, like, and not just the paycheck, just being in that universe means a lot to him, because he doesn't know anything else.
And he was never good at anything except for, and he wasn't even great at wrestling. He was great at selling, and he was, they make a point about how he helped put people over. That was his job. I mean, he would fall, he would lose matches all the time just to help put people over. He was the consummate bad guy, but he was a very enjoyable bad guy.
Yeah, wrestling storytelling was all about the bad guy getting the advantage up until what was very clearly the finale of the feud, and where the good guy finally triumphs. Like, if his entire feud with Dusty Rhodes just ended with him beating Dusty Rhodes all the time, it would have been a nightmare. That's why people look back with such negativeness on Hulk Hogan's past. Like, you look back at his WWF work and you're like, what did he really do? Like, he was just bigger than life at the time, and that was what he did, was just be big and be colorful and bright and loud and catchphrase after catchphrase. And like, he didn't help the industry in any way other than just existing. So
Hogan brought money in and he brought eyeballs in, but he didn't bring longevity in like Ric Flair did.
When they lost Hulk Hogan, WWF was so invested in Hulk Hogan that they went nowhere for years. You spent years trying to make Lex Luger the next Hulk Hogan, because you spent no time building up anyone else to replace him. So and Hulk Hogan did nothing to help you replace him either, because like, even it's something as simple as Bret Hart, he refused to put over. So.
Well, Hogan on top gave other guys jobs, made sure that they were able to make a buck on the undercard. But again, the focus on Hogan. We're switching from Flair to Hogan here. But I mean, Hogan was on top. He brought eyeballs to the show. He got the guys underneath. If you worked on the Hogan show, you got good money. And they didn't transition. I mean, John Cena is in this big match on Survivor Series because they haven't got anybody to put into that spot to pop a buy rate or pop subscriptions. But anyway, back to Flair. So Flair, I mean, the documentary, I enjoyed it a lot. I thought it was well done. I think it was really good for a general audience who's not familiar with wrestling. Some of it was for me, but not a lot of it was for me. Like, I'm really hoping that they give us like a DVD of this with lots of deleted scenes or uncut interviews and the special.
Yeah, it's the interviews that I like, because we know that like, somebody asked like Meltzer why they didn't come to him, and he said, I did do interviews for it, but there's nothing I would have added. So we know there's cutting room
Yeah.
floor interviews for
Well,
that
guys
thing,
like Mick Foley got cut, and a bunch of other people.
Yeah.
But it's not even just the cut stuff. Like, I would like to hear more from the Undertaker,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
more from Cornette, more from anybody
Oh
who
God, it was great
had,
seeing Cornette
who
on
had
there.
like
Yeah.
these 20-second, like,
sound
you know,
bites.
sound bites are basically what it amounted to for the most part. And
Mhm.
to expand on some of that stuff, for me, the hardcore wrestling fan, ooh, just
Right.
give me
So
that meat, right? Give me that.
That's how
substance.
those 30 for. Unfortunately, that's how those 30 for 30s how they work.
Exactly,
Put together as these.
Yeah.
You know, you're really only hearing seconds from a person. They're not for sort of the core. I think you put it right, John. It's for like the masses to get into it,
and that's fine.
Yes, totally fine.
It's also very hard, for because when it's like Ric Flair, you're making a documentary for a person that, for all intent and purpose, is still active. And has been active since the 70s. Most 30 for 30s, it's like, this is like, the championship seasons of this team, or, this particular career of this sports star who's, sports guys tend to only have a few years. Like football players are around for about a decade. And then that's,
if that
you're
long,
talking,
right?
you're talking with Ric Flair. I mean, this guy's been around, like, he's old. His career is older than Star Wars,
Yeah.
It was expertly put together.
Most
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. Yeah, most of them are. The director definitely had a passion for telling this story, and I think there was one scene where they had God, who was it? They were talking about Flair going into the bar after a show and buying like 75 shots or something for people, and just going around the bar spending like what probably amounts to like thousands of dollars just getting everybody completely wasted, and they had a gig to go to the next day.
Mm-hmm.
I would, if I were Ric Flair, I'd be dead. So
and he even said it. He said he didn't know how he was alive. I mean, it was a mystery to him. I also like those animated sequences they had. They had like these little sequences where they animated. They did kind of like a cartoon, but they kept his voice every time.
He narrated the
the cartoon. When he'd giggle, the cartoon, they would animate the cartoon giggling, and that part was actually pretty funny.
Yeah, it was a lot like those storyteller things that they do on the network right now. Like it was fun.
Yeah, and then obviously when it came down to talking about his son and how that all took place, and how his son tried to, he was so proud of his kid, so proud of his son, to the point where he was letting his son kind of be him. With the partying, with the drinking, I'm sure there were drugs or other things that, the lifestyle, without the decades of buildup that Ric Flair had, right? Ric Flair did the stuff. It took him a while to get to where he was, but he did it. He went through the process, and his son was sort of thrown into that lifestyle, and his body and mind weren't ready for it. And
Flair went from 0 to 120 years. And, redid it in 2.
In 2, right? Exactly. And you can't. And then he wasn't ready for it, and then so that devastated Rick. And then and until his daughter sort of took up that mantle, and now he's
because the thing with when that whole video game thing where they were on stage and then ended up getting Jim Ross fired because Ric Flair, that was just like it's all like his son had just died at this point. He had no business being on the stage that time. And so like that was just sort of that couple of minutes that we had of Ric Flair on that video game thing really was exactly where Ric Flair was in that time, at that time, where he just was that, he was already bad, and it was just worse at that moment. So it was depressing, and it's always depressing when you see his kids. It's like whenever you see his kids, because you can always say they talk about him with reverence, but there's also that like, we really don't know our dad at the same time. There's always like this. There's always a little bit of reservations in their voices when they talk about their dad. Like when Charlotte talks about, or you see David talking about him ever and stuff. It's always, it's a little sad because they really don't know. They don't know who Ric Flair really is.
To be honest, it felt like the people who knew him the most, who made comments like Triple H and stuff, they speak about him with reverence, with that little bit of reservation, as you say. Like the people who don't know him really well, oh my God, he's great. He's the best thing ever. I kind of love, you know. But like Triple H said, he was he said he was a consummate liar. I mean, you know, like he's close to enough to Flair to, you can sense that like I love him to pieces, but there's this, you know,
there's this dark side.
There's something there.
He also sucks. So like you know, it's just that sort of
But great. If you haven't watched it, while you listening to this podcast, go out and watch it. It's really good. It's going to be a priority. It should be a priority. And I will definitely be picking it up if they have a Blu-ray come out and has some. Hopefully, there's some extra stuff on there. But with that, let's put a bow on this bad boy. We have Survivor Series. Probably next week we'll record. Survivor Series is on. Is it
this coming Sunday?
So Sunday from now. So we'll figure out a time to record between now and then, and make sure we have our predictions in. Hopefully, I can continue my strange, bizarre, my Jinder Mahal like my streak. The champion that should be champion is I. With that, please follow us. Do all the subscription, fun retweeting stuff at SQW Podcast. We're over at sidequesting.com. Just search for SQW. Click on the podcast area on iTunes, on Stitcher, and I think we're on Google Play, and we're everywhere. Who knows? You can find us individually. I am at Dolly Domovsky. Where can we find you, Jean?
I am at John Kehoe on Twitter, JONKEHOE.
And JJ?
At _double_J.
And JJ is somewhere in a world infested by power moons, as many of us are with our obsession with Mario.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Our Discord chats are always a blast. All right, with that said, everybody, we thank you. See you on the next SQW. SQW.
There we go.
There goes my voice.
Drink that milk. Drink the milk.
It's coffee. Yeah. Very creamy coffee.